Do you know what it's like to sleep in a car at 17? Because your family thinks you're a monster. My mom's voice still echoes in my head the moment she called me a monster. I hear it every time I close my eyes. It's not just the words, it's the way they slice through me, clean and cold, like a blade I didn't see coming. That night, everything I thought I knew about my family, my life, and myself shattered, and I woke up in a reality I never imagined. I'm Ava Carter. I was 17, the perfect daughter on paper straight A's, quiet, respectful, always trying to keep the peace. I was the kind of kid who took extra care to get every homework assignment done, who smiled just enough at the dinner table, who never argued unless it was absolutely necessary. My family liked to call me responsible, mature for my age. I thought that was a compliment until the night it became a weapon. Home was always a tightrope. My parents were religious, conservative, and obsessed with appearances. Everything had to be in order: grades, clothing, the perfect friend, the perfect reputation. Even my emotions had to be filtered through their approval. A laugh too loud, a glance too long at someone they didn't like, a mood that didn't fit their narrative, all of it counted against me. I learned to be careful. I learned to survive in a house where love came with conditions. That night started like any other. I had just gotten home from school, my backpack heavy with textbooks and papers, and my mind still buzzing with the conversation I'd had with my best friend Lily. She'd confided something personal, something I promised to keep secret. But in our small, judgmental town, secrets were dangerous. Lily trusted me, and I had done nothing but try to protect her, but rumors have a way of turning even the best intentions into weapons. I didn't notice at first that my parents were waiting for me in the living room. The lights were low, casting long shadows on the walls. My father sat rigidly in his recliner, arms crossed. My mother's expression was unreadable, the kind of face that made your stomach knot before she even spoke. "You need to explain yourself," my mom said, her voice low and steady. I froze, my backpack slipping from my shoulder. "Explain what?" "You know what?" she said, the words slow, deliberate, like each one was carefully chosen to hurt. "The things people are saying, the influence you've had." I thought I raised a good girl, Ava, but I was wrong. I shook my head, disbelief clouding my mind. "Mom, I didn't do anything wrong. I was just..." "You were just what?" she snapped, standing up, her hands trembling, not with anger, but with the kind of fury that comes from fear and disappointment mixed together. "You were corrupting her, encouraging her to make bad choices. How could you be so monstrous?" I wanted to laugh, except it came out as a choke sob. My body felt hollow. My heart pounded so loudly it hurt. "I didn't, Mom, I swear I was protecting her. I told you everything. You've lied to us," my father said quietly, the calm in his voice worse than yelling. "You've betrayed our trust. We can't have you here anymore." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. I stumbled back, gripping my backpack straps so hard I thought they'd snap. "Wait, what? You're kicking me out?" "You need to leave, Ava," my mom said. Each word, deliberate, final. "Pack your things, take your car, don't come back." I remember standing there in disbelief, frozen in the center of the living room while my parents watched, cold and unyielding. The air felt thick, heavy, as if the house itself had turned against me. Every step I took to gather my things felt unreal, like I was moving through someone else's nightmare. My duffel bag was small, the contents haphazard: pajamas, a few changes of clothes, my laptop, my journal, the little things that still tethered me to my life. I couldn't bring more than that. They had taken everything else: my room, my books, my sense of safety. I didn't cry at first. I couldn't. There wasn't time. Every movement was mechanical, rehearsed. But when the car door closed behind me, the sound of the engine starting, the empty driveway stretching into the dark night, the tears came in a rush I couldn't control. The town was quiet, almost too quiet. The streetlights flickered as I drove aimlessly. The roads familiar and now alien at the same time. I couldn't go home. Home was gone. I couldn't even call anyone. Lily's parents didn't know what had happened, and even if they did, I couldn't ask for help. There was no one. I ended up behind a gas station, my car idling, headlights off, shivering under the thin hoodie I had thrown on over my pajamas. The air was cold, biting, cutting through my skin, and the darkness pressed down on me like a weight. I hugged my knees to my chest, trying to make myself small, trying to disappear. I thought about what they'd said: monster, corrupt, bad influence. Each word lodged itself in my chest like a knife, twisting with every heartbeat. I stared out the windshield, watching the gas pumps gleam in the dim light. The reflection staring back at me was unfamiliar. My hair was tangled, my eyes red and puffy, my face pale in the dashboard glow, and I whispered it aloud, my voice trembling. Maybe I really am what they said I am. I think that was the first night I realized what it meant to be truly alone. Not just physically, though that was terrifying enough, but emotionally, spiritually. To have the people who were supposed to love you most, who were supposed to protect you, look at you and see only what they wanted to see. To have your innocence twisted into some grotesque shape they could justify hating. I tried to sleep, curling up in the passenger seat, the duffel bag beneath me as a makeshift pillow. The car was too small, too cold. The world outside too loud, with the distant hum of traffic and the occasional shout of someone passing by. I shivered, tears soaking into the sleeve of my hoodie, and I wondered if I'd ever feel safe again. Hours passed. I don't know how many. Every sound outside made me jump: a car door slamming, a dog barking, a late night jogger calling out, "Hey!" My body ached, my stomach growled, my mind raced with every possible scenario of how my life had ended up like this. Every memory of my parents' faces that night burned in my head. Their disappointment, their fear, their disgust. And yet, in the midst of it all, there was a strange, fragile clarity. I understood something in those hours behind that gas station, huddled in my car like a broken shell of a person. I understood that I had been blamed for something I didn't do, that the truth didn't matter to them, perception did, that sometimes the people you love most can hurt you more than anyone else in the world. I stayed awake most of the night, watching the darkness outside, thinking about Lily and how I had failed to protect her in the eyes of everyone else, how my life had been rewritten into a story I never agreed to. I didn't know what the morning would bring, didn't know if I'd have the courage to face it, but I knew one thing: I couldn't go back. I couldn't be the girl they wanted me to be, not after what they had done. When the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gray, I finally let myself lie back against the seat and close my eyes. My tears had dried, leaving streaks on my cheeks. My body was exhausted, but my mind was alive with every possibility, every fear, every thought of what it meant to truly be alone. And as I looked at my reflection one last time before sleep claimed me, I whispered again, barely audible, "Maybe I really am what they said I am." But somewhere deep down, beneath the fear, beneath the pain, a tiny spark of defiance flickered. Because even though they had cast me out, even though they had labeled me a monster, I was still here. I was still breathing. And that somehow meant something. The night had broken me. But maybe, just maybe, it hadn't completely destroyed me. You stop being a person when people decide your story for you. That's what I learned in the days, weeks, and months after I left my house. At 17, I went from being the perfect daughter to invisible. I wasn't just ignored, I was erased. And the world didn't care. At first, it was chaos. I slept in my car wherever I could park unnoticed, behind diners with neon signs buzzing through the night, under streetlights where the shadows could hide me. I showered at gyms or public pools, usually late at night, my arms shaking from cold water and fear. I skipped meals because $10 lasted longer, stretched across days, and hunger became a background noise that I learned to tolerate. Every day was a calculation. Which alley was safe? Which streetlight was least watched? Which diner would let me stay without asking questions? People passed me without a glance, and I realized quickly that I was part of a world that didn't exist in their eyes. Teachers, neighbors, even friends from school, they all had a version of me in their minds, a version that fit the story my parents had told. And it wasn't me. I was just a ghost moving through daylight, hiding in shadows. It was behind a 24-hour diner that I met Ray. I had parked my car at the end of the lot, headlights off, hugging my knees against the seat, trying to convince myself a sleep was possible. Ray was older, probably in his late 50s, with gray hair curling under a beat-up baseball cap and eyes that somehow saw everything without judging. He was sitting on the curb, a shopping cart beside him, filled with the remnants of a life he didn't get to keep. "You new around here?" he asked, his voice rough but not unkind. I stiffened. Yeah, I mumbled, staring at the dashboard. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, tilting his head, examining me like he could see straight through the layers of fear and shame. "Or maybe you are one." I laughed, bitter and dry. Something like that. That was the beginning. Ray didn't ask for explanations. He didn't care about the lies my parents had spread. He just looked at me and treated me like I was human. And that was something I hadn't felt in months. Over the next few weeks, he taught me survival. How to find safe spots to sleep that weren't too visible. How to stretch a few dollars for food over multiple meals. How to read people walking by to know if I was in danger. He even showed me where I could shower for free. And gave me advice about blending in when I went to grocery stores or fast food restaurants. "You don't get seen by accident," he told me one night as we sat on a curb, the city quiet around us. "You get seen because you want to be, or because you can't help it. Most people, they won't notice you unless you're causing trouble. So don't." I listened, drinking in his words like they were medicine. He had lived this life before, and there was a weight in his voice that told me he understood exactly what it meant to be erased, to be blamed for a story that wasn't yours. One night, as we huddled under a bridge to escape a sudden rainstorm, he started telling me about his past. I hadn't asked, but he shared anyway. "I was disowned at your age," he said, voice low. "Family told me I was a problem. I believed them for a long time. Thought I was worthless. Then I realized worth isn't given. You take it, you survive. You keep moving, even when it hurts." I nodded, feeling the echo of my own life in his words. That night, I let myself cry for the first time in the open air, watching the rain fall and listening to him hum a quiet, sad tune. Between the survival lessons, Ray taught me about safety too. Where the cops would ask questions and where they wouldn't. Which alleys were safe and which ones had predators lurking. He had a network, other invisible people, and slowly I became part of it. They didn't ask questions, they didn't judge. They just existed. Just like me. In quiet moments, I'd think about Lily, my best friend, the reason my life had unraveled. I'd replay that day 1,000 times. Her tears, her fear, her whispered confession that led to everything. I hadn't told anyone, not even my parents, because it wasn't mine to tell. But the predator in the school, Mr. Cartwright had twisted it, made it sound like I was complicit. Rumors spread, lies became truth in the eyes of everyone I loved. My parents had believed them, and that betrayal, more than anything else, hurt deeper than sleeping in a cold car or going hungry. Ray noticed my silence one night. "You're thinking about her, aren't you?" he asked softly, handing me a thermos of coffee he had scavenged from somewhere. I looked at him surprised. "Yeah," I admitted, my voice cracking. I tried to protect her, and it backfired. "Everyone thinks I did something wrong." He nodded. "I get it. I've been blamed for things I didn't do. Life has a funny way of throwing the blame on the people who care the most. Don't let it break you, kid. Use it. Learn from it. Grow stronger." Somehow, his words felt like armor. They didn't erase the pain, but they made it bearable. The nights were still cold, the car still uncomfortable, hunger still gnawed at my stomach, but now I had someone who believed I was more than the lie my parents had told. But life in the shadows isn't easy, and even small victories have a cost. One evening, Ray didn't show up at our usual meeting spot. Concern gnawed at me as I searched the lot, the alleys, the corner benches we sometimes shared. I finally found him slumped against the wall, shivering, skin pale. He had a fever and couldn't stand. "Ray," I whispered, panic lacing my voice. I tried to help him to the car, my hands trembling as I applied pressure to his shoulders. He groaned, looking up at me with a weak smile. Guess it's my turn to teach you how fragile things can be," he croaked. I realized then how fragile my new world was. Ray had been my anchor, the only consistent force in my upside-down life. And now he was vulnerable, reminding me that survival wasn't just about keeping yourself alive. It was about keeping the people who mattered alive too. I sat beside him that night, holding a blanket around both of us, the cold creeping in around our bodies, and thought about how quickly everything could disappear, how someone you counted on could be gone in an instant, how invisible people sometimes needed each other more than anyone realized. That night, as I closed my eyes, I felt a mixture of fear, determination, and something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could survive. Maybe I could find a way to exist in a world that didn't want me. Maybe I could prove to myself that I was more than the lies and the whispers, more than the monster my parents said I was. And for the first time in months, I allowed myself to believe I wasn't completely alone. When you hit rock bottom, there's nowhere to go but up, or you stay there forever. I learned that lesson the hard way, in a way that's impossible to forget. The night Ray passed, I felt like the floor beneath me had disappeared. He wasn't just an old man I'd met behind a diner. He was my mentor, my anchor, the only person who had ever truly seen me as a human being instead of a rumor, a lie, or a monster. And now he was gone. I remember that morning clearly. His body was cold and still, curled against the wall where he had spent the night. I sat beside him for what felt like hours, just holding his hand, willing him to move, willing him to open his eyes, willing him to tell me it was a mistake, that he was just sleeping. But the truth was cruelly final. Ray had gone. I buried him quietly in the park. He had loved a small plot near a cluster of oak trees where sunlight filtered through the leaves in long, dappled streaks. I left a single wildflower I had picked from the edge of the lot, and I wrote a note in my messy handwriting. "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did. I will not forget." I placed it on his grave, and for the first time in a long while, I cried without restraint. That day, I made a promise to myself. If Ray's life had taught me anything, it was that survival isn't enough. You have to fight, you have to move, and you have to build. I couldn't let my life be defined by the car I slept in, the rumors that chased me, or the family that had cast me aside. I had to rise. The next morning, I applied for a job at the 24-hour diner I had passed countless times while hiding in my car. Its neon sign flickered faintly as I walked in, hoodie pulled low, hair still tangled from sleepless nights. Mrs. Rivera, the owner, was behind the counter, wiping down tables with a rag that had seen better days. She looked me up and down and didn't smile. "You lost or just desperate?" she asked, voice rough but not unkind. I swallowed hard. I need a job. I can work mornings, nights, anything." She paused, studying me like she could see right through my frayed edges. Finally, she said, "Fine. Show up at 5. Don't be late. Don't look like a junkie, and maybe you'll survive here." That was the first time someone had given me a chance without knowing the lies my parents had spread. That was the first time someone treated me like I could actually do something with my life. The job wasn't glamorous. I washed dishes, wiped tables, and took orders late into the night while the city hummed around us. But for the first time in months, I felt a tiny spark of purpose. My car was still my bedroom at night, but I parked close enough to the diner that I felt safe. Slowly, the nights became easier to endure because I had a reason to wake up. I didn't stop there. I signed up for GED classes at a local community center. The first day I walked in, I felt that familiar pang of shame. 17. Still in survival mode, trying to catch up while everyone else seemed ahead. But I pushed through, because if I wanted a life beyond the car and the street, I had to learn to fight for it. One evening, while I was studying at the diner, I noticed a girl sitting in the corner, laptop open, headphones on, completely absorbed in her work. Her name was Maya, and she was a college student who worked part-time at a nearby bookstore. We started talking about school, then classes, then books we liked. Slowly, she became my first real friend in months, the first person I felt I could be honest with. And one night, after weeks of tentative trust, I finally told her everything. The truth about Ray, about my parents, about Lily, about the night that had destroyed me. I told her about sleeping in my car, skipping meals, hiding in shadows, the fear that had become my constant companion. She didn't flinch. She didn't whisper that I was crazy or dangerous. She just listened, really listened. And when I was done, she said, "Ava, I believe you. I don't care what anyone else says. You're not a monster." For the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. Months passed. The GED classes went well. The diner shifts became easier, and I managed to save enough for a tiny room in a building just a few blocks from the diner. It wasn't much, just a small space with peeling paint and a bed that squeaked when you moved, but it was mine. I could lock the door, I could turn on the lights, I could make it a space where I belonged. One night, I parked my old car in the lot behind the diner, staring at it as I traced the scratches along its side. This car had been my bed, my refuge, my prison, and my witness. I whispered into the empty night, voice soft but steady. "You kept me alive when no one else did." I didn't know if I believed it yet, not completely, but I knew this much. I wasn't the same terrified girl who had cried in the driver's seat months ago. I was stronger, tougher, and braver. I was still fragile in some ways, but I was learning how to survive and how to live. Maya knocked at my door the next morning, bright-eyed, holding 2 coffees. "Ready for class?" she asked, grinning. I laughed a real laugh that didn't hide behind fear or shame. I nodded, taking one of the cups, and as we walked out into the morning light, I realized that the world didn't have to define me, didn't have to erase me, didn't have to tell me who I was. I was Ava Carter, survivor, fighter, invisible girl turned determined woman, and I wasn't going back to anyone who tried to tell me otherwise. That night, as I lay on my thin mattress, exhausted but awake in a way that felt alive, I thought about Ray. I imagined him smiling at me, telling me to keep going. I thought about Lily and how I had protected her even if the world didn't understand. I thought about Maya and the fragile threads of friendship and trust I was weaving back together. And I whispered into the dark, the words almost like a vow. "You kept me alive when no one else did." And this time, I believed it. They told me I was a monster. So why did they look like ghosts when I showed up at their door? That thought ran through my mind like wildfire as I stepped off the train and onto the platform of my old hometown. 3 years had passed since I had left behind the house that claimed to be my home, the family that claimed to love me, and the life I had been forced to abandon. I was Ava Carter, 20 now, studying psychology, working part-time, and learning that survival alone wasn't enough. I had built something of myself in those years, something they never imagined. The text had come that morning. "Your father is in the hospital. Please come." Short, cold, and unexpected. No apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement of the years I had spent erased from their lives. And yet, something inside me, maybe curiosity, maybe a stubborn streak of compassion, made me get dressed, pack my bag, and take the train. I hadn't been back in this town in years. The streets looked the same, and yet everything had changed. Every corner held a memory of fear, of whispered lies, of nights spent in my car pretending the world outside didn't exist. I wondered how they would look at me now, how they would reconcile the monster they had created with the woman who had survived it. When I arrived at the hospital, my father's condition was stable, but weak. My mother was in the waiting room, her hands clasped tightly, eyes darting around nervously. My brother, Alex, hovered nearby, pretending to scroll through his phone. I could feel the tension before I even stepped into the room. I took a deep breath and walked in. The moment they saw me, it was like time had fractured. My mother froze, her hand half raised as if to shield herself from me. My father blinked slowly, confusion and guilt mingling on his face. Alex looked away, pretending not to notice, but his fingers trembled slightly. And then there was Emma, my little sister, now 10, standing awkwardly behind our mother, eyes wide. She had grown up hearing the family's version of my story, the one where I had been corrupt, dangerous, a bad influence. But now she looked at me differently, curious, hesitant, and finally understanding. I didn't speak at first. I let them take in the sight of me, the hair slightly longer, the shoulders stronger, the eyes no longer haunted but steady. I could feel their guilt like a tangible weight pressing down on the room. Finally, Emma spoke. "Mom, Dad, I told you the truth." Her voice was quiet but firm. "About Mr. Cartwright. He confessed before he was fired. Ava didn't do anything wrong. She was protecting me." I felt the room tilt. My mother's hands flew to her face. My father's lips quivered. Alex looked as though the floor had dropped beneath him. And in that moment, the world I had fled came rushing back, the betrayal, the humiliation, the nights spent feeling like a ghost. "You," my mother started, voice breaking. How could we not see it? We failed you." "You didn't just fail me," I said, voice rising, shaking with years of suppressed pain. "You told me I was a monster. You called me corrupt. You erased me from your lives. You chose lies over your own daughter." My father opened his mouth, but I cut him off. Don't say anything. I've heard enough apologies in my head for 3 lifetimes. You don't get to rewrite the past now." Tears streamed down my mother's face, but I didn't flinch. My anger was hot, real, alive. Every memory of my car, every night spent hungry and cold, every insult and rumor that chased me, it all came flooding back. And I let it out in a torrent of words they couldn't interrupt, couldn't defend against. "You pretended I didn't exist," I said, pacing the small hospital room, fist clenched. "You looked at me and saw the monster you wanted to see. You forgot what it meant to be a parent. And now you want me to just forgive? To come back? To pretend none of it happened? My father's face turned pale. My mother's sobs were loud now, desperate, pleading. Alex hung his head, but Emma just watched, silent, offering me the only thing I needed, validation. I stopped pacing and looked at them, voice trembling but unwavering. You don't get to undo this. You don't get to pretend. You've lived with your lies for 3 years, and now it's your turn to live with the truth. You've caused pain, you've caused fear, and now you have to face it. Silence fell over the room, thick and suffocating. They couldn't respond. Their own guilt had silenced them, and in that moment, I realized something profound. I wasn't here for forgiveness. I wasn't here to be welcomed back. I was here to stand in my truth, to reclaim the power they had tried to steal. I turned toward the door, feeling the weight of my past lift slightly with each step. I glanced back once, at the family that had called me a monster, at the people who had cast me aside. My voice was soft, now almost a whisper. You can't go home when it never really was one. And then I walked out. The hallway stretched long and cold, but I felt lighter than I had in years. I thought of Emma, brave enough to tell the truth, and of Maya, who had believed me without hesitation. I thought of Ray, whose memory had carried me through the darkest nights. They were my family now, not the people who had tried to define me, but the ones who had truly seen me. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the world in shades of gold and pink. I inhaled deeply, letting the air fill my lungs. The house behind me, the lives I had once known, all remained locked in their shadows, trapped in guilt and regret. But I didn't need to unlock it. I didn't need to go back. I had survived. I had grown. And I had my own life to live. For the first time in years, I felt something I thought I had lost forever. Freedom. Blood didn't save me. Strangers did. That thought has been my mantra for years now. My parents' home, the town I grew up in, the family that called me a monster, those things belong to a past I survived, not a future I live. The truth is, I've discovered that family isn't about who shares your last name or lives under the same roof. Family is who sees you, who chooses you, who refuses to let you vanish even when the world does. It took me a long time to get here. There were nights when I believed survival was the only measure of life, just making it through, just keeping my head above water. The nights in my car, the sandwiches I split into halves for dinner and breakfast, the alleyways and abandoned benches those nights taught me to endure. But they didn't teach me joy. They didn't teach me connection. And yet every small kindness, every trust I had to rebuild led me to something I never expected. Love that didn't demand perfection, acceptance that didn't hinge on reputation, belonging that didn't require excuses. Maya was the first. She believed me when no one else did. She didn't flinch when I told her my story. She didn't blink when I cried in front of her, messy hair falling across my face, hands shaking, the weight of years of shame spilling out of me. She smiled, offered coffee, stayed, and in that quiet, unwavering presence, I found the courage to rebuild. Mrs. Rivera came next. The diner became more than just a job. It became a safe haven, a place where I could show up and be recognized, not for my mistakes or my past, but for my work, my presence, my effort. She had no patience brought for excuses, but her loyalty ran deep. She taught me how to stand strong in a world that didn't owe me anything, how to fight for respect while still showing kindness. Together with a small circle of friends I met along the way, I began to understand what family truly meant. It wasn't blood, it wasn't control, it was choice, and they chose me every single day. I started volunteering at youth shelters, giving back to the invisible kids who reminded me so much of my 17-year-old self. The teens I met were scared, hungry, and exhausted from living in worlds that didn't notice them. I taught them what Ray had taught me, how to stay safe, how to stretch a dollar, how to find hope when everything else is gone. Some nights I helped them find temporary places to sleep. Other nights I simply listened, because sometimes listening is the most powerful form of love. One night I was closing up at the diner when I noticed movement behind a gas station. Shadows shifted under the flickering neon lights, and there she was, a girl no older than I had been, hunched over a duffel bag, hair tangled, eyes wide and terrified. My chest tightened, memories of that first night flooding back. Every shiver, every sob, every whispered, "Maybe I really am what they said I am," came rushing forward. I approached slowly, kneeling beside her. "Hey," I said softly. "It's okay. You're safe." She flinched, backing up instinctively, but I didn't move closer. I reached into my bag and pulled out a warm sandwich and a bottle of water. "Here," I said gently. "Eat. You'll feel better after." Her eyes widened and she hesitated. Then, tentatively, she took the food. I watched her unwrap it, hands trembling, and I saw myself reflected in her fear, her confusion, her uncertainty. "Don't worry," I said, my voice firm but kind. "You're not alone. I've been where you are, and you'll make it through, I promise." That night, I stayed with her behind the gas station, sharing stories of survival, listening to her fears, offering warmth and reassurance, and I realized this was the moment my life had been leading to. I was no longer just surviving, I was saving. I was becoming someone who could take the pain of the world and turn it into hope for others. As I walked home later, the cool night air brushing my face, I thought about everything I had lost my childhood, my family, my innocence, and everything I had built. A life of my own choosing, relationships that were authentic, love that was unconditional, purpose that mattered. The contrast was stark, but I no longer felt bitter. I felt free. I looked at my old car, parked under a dim streetlight, remembering the nights it had been my bed, my shelter, my witness. I ran my hand along the worn roof, whispering into the quiet city night. You kept me alive when no one else did. You gave me a place to start. And now, I'm going to make sure no one else goes through what I did. For the first time, I understood that being thrown away didn't mean I was worthless. It meant I was being set free, free to find the people who would see me, who would fight for me, who would love me without conditions, free to create my own family, my own life, my own story. And that was more than enough. I used to think being thrown away meant I was worthless, I said aloud. To the night, to the girl behind the gas station, to the world. But the truth is, I was just being set free to find the people who'd see me for who I really am. And with that, I smiled. The first smile in a long time that wasn't tinged with fear or doubt. I had found my home, not in walls, not in blood, not in the past, but in the hearts of the people I chose. My family wasn't perfect, it wasn't traditional, but it was mine. And it was real. All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the story. We have so many more amazing stories coming your way, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to reach 100K subscribers by the end of this year, and we'd love for you to be part of this journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.